In our first lecture, Professor Hill introduced us to the structure of this class and also discussed how happiness may be the most universal emotion. We then moved on to talk about positive psychology and how to be happy is to experience a full range of emotions, including the negative ones, which I'd never thought about before. Our next topic was flourishing, where we discussed the 6 virtues and Ether 1227, and how we should work on both our weaknesses and our strengths to improve. I loved our lecture on authentic happiness, where we talked about inhaling love and exhaling gratitude, and also about forgiveness and how it relieves anger, it relieves stress, and creates more positive optimism. In the How of Happiness lecture, I enjoyed learning about the myths regarding happiness. The first one being that happiness must be found. The second being that happiness lies in changing our circumstances. And the third being you either have it or you don't. In our Positivity and Love lecture, I learned that positivity broadens and builds, while love is our supreme emotion. We then learned about flow, a state where one can lose a sense of self-concern and their perception of time is altered. In our Meaning and Achievement lecture, we began by singing along to Tim McGraw's Live Like You Were Dying. This gave me a greater appreciation for life. In our next lecture, we discussed the world's happiest places: Denmark, Singapore, Nuevo Leon, Mexico, and San Luis Obispo, California. I connected to these because I am from a small Danish town that is close to San Luis Obispo, California. In the Why We Do What We Do lecture, we learned about intrinsic motivation and how it provides learning, creativity, problem solving, and creates a richer experience. In our self-determination theory class, we also learned about autonomy and how it is feeling free in your actions and self-governing. In our time famine lecture, we discussed how there are time thieves, things that take away our time, such as phones or overscheduling. In our Taking Back Our Time lecture, we learned about Shabbat, which means to pause or cease. I find that when things get overwhelming, this is very helpful. The Digital Age lesson, we learned about how there are positive things about technology, that it is easy to use and has quick connection, and negative things such as distraction or jealousy between family and friends. In the lecture about families, we learned that there are many different types of families, the most important being the intentional family. We then moved on to talk about family rituals and how it is important to have experiences and adventures in the family. We also talked about the importance of communication between spouses and children and extended family. Our last Child in the Woods lecture was the first lecture that we did at home. I really enjoyed this lecture because we went and we did skits in nature and shared how we can connect better. Our Experiencing Economy lecture, we talked about how engaging the 5 senses for our customers will help us to build a better connection with them. When we talked about fostering empathy, I found it interesting when we talked about betrayal and self-justification when it comes to treating other people as we should. We introduced design thinking. I found it interesting that we did the Marshmallow Tower Design Challenge because it got us to really think about how to design certain structures and experiences. The Designing Your Life intro, we talked about how passion comes after you try something and discover you like it and then master it. After the introduction, we began to focus on wayfinding and our Odyssey plans. We started to learn about our mind mapping and begun to focus on how we can create our Odyssey plans. In our prototyping lecture, we talked about how we can create experiences to help us go through and complete our goals and follow our dreams. In our last lecture, we talked about choosing happiness, and something that stuck out to me was the failure reframing exercise, where we took our failures and logged them, noticing how we can grow from them and defining what type of failure they were. Overall, I really enjoyed this class, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that I've had to learn from Professor Hill. I am so glad that I've been able to learn how to design a happier and better life.